Please don't leave me out here. Get out! This is where you belong now.
A pregnant woman begged her husband's family to take her to the hospital as her labor pains grew stronger. They laughed at her, they mocked her, they called her dramatic. But one cold midnight, when the baby finally started coming, they did something she never expected. They threw her out of the mansion into the rain to die. Why? Because the baby was a girl. They said she was useless. They said the family needed a boy, not a burden. But what they didn't know was that this woman they treated like garbage was actually a lost princess. And the baby girl they called worthless. She was born to wear a crown. 6 months later, 5 expensive cars pulled up at that same mansion. And when the doors opened, the family's faces went white with shock. Who was in those vehicles? And what would happen to the people who threw away royalty? Sit back and find out as we delve into this touching story. The labor pains started just after midnight. Sarah gripped the edge of the kitchen counter, her breath catching in her throat. The mansion was silent around her, cold, empty, the kind of silence that made her feel like she was drowning in her own fear. "Marcus," she called out weakly. Her voice barely carried past the kitchen door. "Marcus, please, the baby. She's coming." No answer. Sarah pressed her hand against her swollen belly and took small, shaking steps toward the stairs. Each contraction felt like fire spreading through her body. She stopped halfway across the marble floor, leaning against the wall, trying to breathe through the pain. Her forehead was wet with sweat. Her legs trembled. "Marcus," she called again, louder this time. Her voice cracked. "Please, I need you." Still nothing. She climbed the stairs slowly, one hand on the railing, the other on her stomach. Each step felt like climbing a mountain. When she reached the bedroom, she pushed the door open. Marcus was sitting on the edge of the bed, his phone in his hand. The light from the screen lit up his face in the darkness. He didn't even look up. "Marcus," Sarah whispered, her voice desperate. "The baby. I need to go to the hospital, now, please." He glanced at her for 1 second. His face showed nothing, no worry, no care, just irritation, like she was interrupting something important. "Again?" he asked flatly. "You've been saying that for 3 days, Sarah." "This time it's real," she said, her voice shaking. Tears were already forming in her eyes. "Please, I can't do this alone. The contractions are getting closer. She's coming." Marcus stood up slowly. He straightened his shirt and ran his hand through his hair. Then he looked at her from head to toe, the way someone looks at something broken that they no longer want to fix. The way someone looks at trash. "Where is my mother?" he asked, his voice cold. I don't know," Sarah said, another contraction hitting her. She bent forward, gripping her stomach. "Please, Marcus, we need to go. We need to go now." He walked past her without touching her. His shoulder brushed hers as he left the room. Sarah stood there for a moment, tears stinging her eyes. She felt like her heart was being squeezed by an invisible hand. Then another contraction hit, stronger this time, and she doubled over, gripping the doorframe with both hands. "Please," she whispered to the empty room. "Please, God, help me." Downstairs, she heard voices, sharp, loud, familiar, the voices that had made her life a living nightmare for the past year. Marcus's mother. Sarah forced herself to move. She walked slowly down the stairs, holding the railing tightly. Her whole body was shaking now. When she reached the bottom, she saw them. Marcus, his mother, Victoria, his father, Richard, his sister, Diane. All of them were standing in the living room, like they were having a casual evening chat, staring at her like she was an intruder in their home. "She's in labor," Marcus said, his tone flat and bored, like he was reporting the weather. Victoria's eyes narrowed. She crossed her arms and tilted her head slightly, studying Sarah like she was inspecting a stain on expensive fabric. Her lips curled into something that was almost a smile, but not quite. "How do you know it's labor?" Victoria asked coldly. Sarah blinked. "What?" "I said," Victoria repeated slowly, her voice dripping with contempt. "How do you know it's labor? You've been dramatic for weeks. Every little pain, you cry. Every little ache, you complain. Every single day, it's something new. Maybe you're just hungry. Maybe you're just tired. Maybe you're just being your usual weak self." Sarah's mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked at Marcus. He looked away, his jaw tight. "Please," Sarah whispered, her voice breaking. "I need help. The baby is coming. I can feel it. Something is wrong. Please." Victoria stepped forward. Her heels clicked sharply on the marble floor. Each click felt like a hammer hitting Sarah's chest. She stopped a few feet away from Sarah, close enough that Sarah could smell her expensive perfume. It made her stomach turn. "Let me ask you something," Victoria said softly, her voice like poisoned honey. "What did the doctor say the baby is?" Sarah swallowed hard. Her throat felt like sandpaper. "A girl." The room went still, completely still. The air felt heavy, thick, suffocating. Victoria's face hardened, her lips pressed into a thin line. Richard shifted on his feet but said nothing. Diane smirked and looked down at her nails, examining them like they were the most interesting thing in the world. "A girl," Victoria repeated slowly. Her voice was ice, pure ice. "Yes," Sarah said quietly. "A baby girl." Victoria turned to Marcus. "Did you hear that? A girl. After all this time, after everything we've given her, after we took her into this family, after we fed her and housed her and treated her like she was somebody, she's giving you a girl." Marcus said nothing. He just stood there, his hands in his pockets, staring at the floor. Sarah's legs felt weak. Another contraction came, stronger this time, more painful. She bent forward, gasping for air. Her vision blurred. She thought she might fall. "Please," she begged, her voice barely a whisper. "Please, I need to go to the hospital. I need help. The baby needs help." Victoria laughed. It was short and bitter and cruel. "You want us to take you to the hospital? For what? To birth a useless girl? To waste our money on someone who will bring us nothing? To shame this family with weakness?" "She's not useless," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. "She's your granddaughter. She's your blood. She's a human being." "She's nothing," Victoria snapped, her voice rising. "This family needs a boy, an heir, a strong son who will carry on our name. Not some weak, worthless girl who will carry another man's name one day. Not some burden who will cost us money and bring us shame." Sarah looked at Marcus again. Her eyes pleaded with him. Her whole body shook. "Marcus, please," Sarah whispered. "Say something. Stand up for me. Stand up for your daughter. Please." He finally looked at her. His gaze was cold, empty, dead. "My mother is right," he said quietly. "We needed a son." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She staggered back, her hand pressed against the wall for support. She felt like someone had just punched her in the chest. You agree with her?" Sarah asked, her voice breaking into pieces. "You agree that our daughter is worthless?" "Yes," Marcus said simply. No emotion, no feeling, just cold, hard truth. "I do." Victoria stepped closer to Sarah. Her eyes were filled with hatred. "You have disappointed this family. You had one job, one simple job, and you failed. You failed spectacularly." "I didn't choose the baby's gender," Sarah said, her voice shaking with anger now. "That's not how it works. That's not how biology works. I can't control—" "I don't care how it works," Victoria hissed, cutting her off. "All I know is that you're carrying a girl, and this family has no use for her, no use for either of you." Another contraction ripped through Sarah's body. This one was different, stronger, more urgent. She cried out, a sound that was half scream, half sob. She doubled over, her knees buckled. She fell to the floor, her hands pressed against the cold marble. The impact sent pain shooting through her knees. "Help me," she gasped, looking up at them through her tears. "Please, someone help me. I'm begging you. I'm dying. The baby is dying." No one moved. Sarah looked up at them through her tears, her vision blurry. Marcus stood there, hands still in his pockets, face blank. Victoria watched with her arms crossed, her face cold and unmoved, like she was watching a mildly interesting television show. Richard turned his head away, unable to meet her eyes. Diane smiled, actually smiled, like she was enjoying the show. "Get out," Victoria said. Her voice was calm, final, like she was ordering a servant to clean a room. Sarah blinked. "What?" "I said get out," Victoria repeated, louder this time, her voice echoing through the mansion. "Get out of this house. You and that useless thing in your belly. We don't want you here. We never wanted you here. You were a mistake from the beginning." You can't mean that," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. "I mean every single word," Victoria said, her eyes boring into Sarah's. She turned to Marcus. "Tell her, Marcus. Tell her what we discussed." Marcus looked at Sarah. For one brief second, something flickered in his eyes. Guilt, maybe, or regret. Then it was gone, replaced by cold indifference. "Leave," he said quietly. Sarah stared at him. Her husband, the man she had loved, the man she had given everything to. "Marcus, I'm your wife. This is your child, your daughter, your blood. I don't want her," he said. His voice was flat, final, like he was declining an offer for coffee. "I don't want either of you." The words shattered something inside Sarah, something that could never be put back together. She tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't hold her. Another contraction came, and she screamed. The pain was unbearable now. She felt like her body was tearing apart from the inside. "Please," she sobbed, her whole body shaking. "Please, I can't do this alone. I'm going to die. We're going to die. Please don't do this." "Then die somewhere else," Victoria said coldly, without even a flicker of emotion. "Not in my house. Not on my floor, not where I have to see it." Richard finally spoke. His voice was low and tired and ashamed. "Victoria, maybe we should—" "Stay out of this," Victoria snapped, her head whipping toward him. "This is my decision. This is my house. These are my rules." She pointed at Sarah like she was pointing at garbage. "Security, get her out of here, now, immediately." 2 security guards appeared from the hallway. They walked towards Sarah slowly, their faces uncomfortable but obedient. They had families to feed, jobs to keep. They couldn't say no. "Madam, please," one of them said softly, bending down beside Sarah. "You need to leave." "I can't walk," Sarah gasped, her whole body convulsing with pain. "The baby, she's coming right now." The guard looked at Victoria, his eyes questioning, hoping she would change her mind. Victoria waved her hand dismissively. "I don't care. Carry her out if you have to. Drag her if you must. Just get her away from here. Get her away from my sight." The guards bent down and lifted Sarah gently, trying their best not to hurt her. She cried out in pain as they carried her toward the door. Every movement sent fresh waves of agony through her body. She reached out toward Marcus, her hand trembling, her fingers stretching desperately. "Marcus," she sobbed, her voice breaking. "Please, don't do this. Please, I love you. I've always loved you. Please don't throw us away." He turned his back, slowly, deliberately. He walked toward the stairs without looking back. The guards carried Sarah outside into the cold night. The rain had just started, light at first, then heavier. They set her down carefully on the wet ground near the gate, under a small tree that offered no real shelter. "We're sorry, madam," one of them whispered, his voice filled with genuine regret. "We have to follow orders. We have families. We can't lose our jobs. I'm so sorry." Then they walked back inside. The gate closed behind them with a heavy clang that echoed through the night. Sarah lay there on the ground, rain soaking through her clothes. Her body was shaking violently now, cold, pain, fear, all of it mixed together. Her mind was screaming. The contractions were coming faster now, stronger, unbearable. She could feel the baby moving, fighting to come out. "Help," she whispered into the dark, her voice barely carrying over the sound of the rain. "Somebody, please. Anybody, help us." No one came. She tried to crawl toward the road, using every ounce of strength she had left. But the pain was too much. Her arms gave out. She collapsed again, her cheek pressed against the wet pavement, her vision blurred. Her breath came in short, desperate gasps. She could feel consciousness slipping away. "Please, God," she whispered, her lips barely moving. "Please save my baby. Please don't let her die. She doesn't deserve this. Please." And then, through the rain, through the darkness, she saw headlights. Bright. Coming closer. A car stopped. A door opened. Footsteps ran toward her. "Oh my God," a woman's voice said, filled with horror and urgency. "Someone help me. She's in labor. Call an ambulance. Now." Sarah tried to speak, tried to say thank you, tried to say please help my baby, but the darkness pulled her under. Everything went black. When Sarah opened her eyes, she was in a hospital bed. The room was bright and clean and smelled like antiseptic. A steady beeping sound filled the air. Machines surrounded her. She blinked slowly, trying to remember where she was, what had happened, why her body felt so empty. Then she heard it, a soft cry, tiny, fragile, beautiful. Sarah's head turned quickly, panic flooding through her. "My baby," she whispered. "Where's my baby?" A nurse appeared beside her, smiling gently. "She's right here, Mama. Don't worry, she's safe." The nurse was holding a tiny bundle wrapped in pink cloth. She brought the baby closer and placed her gently in Sarah's arms. The weight was almost nothing, but it felt like the whole world. "Congratulations," the nurse said warmly. "You have a beautiful baby girl." Sarah looked down at her daughter's face. She was small, so small, fragile, but perfect, absolutely perfect. Her tiny fingers curled into little fists. Her eyes were closed. Her lips were pink and soft. Is she okay?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "She's perfect," the nurse. 10 fingers, 10 toes, strong lungs, healthy heart. She's a fighter, just like her mama." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. They spilled over, running down her cheeks. "Hi," Sarah whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "Hi, my baby. I'm your mama. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for everything that happened. But I promise, I will never let anyone hurt you again." The baby's eyes opened slightly. They were dark and clear and beautiful. Sarah felt her heart break and heal at the same time. "I'm going to name you Zara," Sarah whispered. "It means princess. Because that's what you are. You're my princess." A doctor walked into the room. She was an older woman with kind eyes and grey hair pulled back in a bun. She looked at Sarah with deep concern. "How are you feeling?" the doctor asked gently. "Tired," Sarah said quietly, "but okay. Thank you for saving us." The doctor nodded. "You were brought in just in time. A woman found you on the road. She called an ambulance immediately. You're very lucky. Another few minutes and—" She stopped, not wanting to finish the sentence. Sarah looked down at Zara again. "Lucky," she repeated softly. She didn't feel lucky. She felt broken, shattered, used, thrown away. "Do you have family we can call?" the doctor asked gently. Sarah shook her head, fresh tears falling. "No, they don't want us." The doctor's face softened. She sat down in the chair beside the bed. "I see. Well, you're safe here. We'll take care of you, both of you." Sarah stayed in the hospital for 3 days. She had no money, no home, no plan, but she had Zara, and for now that was enough. She held her daughter, she fed her, she sang to her, she made promises she didn't know how to keep. On the 3rd day, a woman walked into her room. She was tall and elegant, dressed in a long, flowing dress made of expensive fabric. Her hair was wrapped in a beautiful headscarf with gold thread. Her eyes were warm but sharp, like she could see right through to your soul. "Sarah?" the woman asked, her voice smooth and cultured. Sarah looked up from feeding Zara. "Yes?" the woman smiled gently. "My name is Isabella. I'm the one who found you on the road." Sarah's eyes widened. Her breath caught. You saved us." Isabella nodded. She moved Isabella fully into the room and sat down in the chair beside the bed. "How are you feeling?" "Better," Sarah said quietly, her voice filled with gratitude. "Thank you. I don't know how to thank you. You saved my life. You saved my daughter's life. I can never repay you." Isabella waved her hand dismissively. "You don't need to thank me. I did what anyone should do." She paused, studying Sarah's face with intense focus. "But I do have a question. Why were you alone on that road in the middle of labor, in the rain, with no help?" Sarah looked down at Zara sleeping in her arms. Her throat tightened. The memories came flooding back. The pain, the rejection, the gate closing. "They kicked me out," Sarah whispered. "Who?" Isabella asked gently, leaning forward. "My husband, his family. They didn't want a girl. They said she was useless. They said I disappointed them. They said this family needs a boy, not a burden." Sarah's voice broke. "They threw me out like I was nothing, like garbage, like I didn't matter." Isabella's face hardened. Her hands gripped the armrests of the chair. Her knuckles turned white. "What is your husband's name?" Marcus Lowell, Sarah whispered, the name tasting like poison in her mouth. Isabella went very still, her entire body tensed, her eyes narrowed dangerously. Then she leaned forward slowly, her voice dropping. Marcus Lowell, Isabella repeated carefully. Son of Richard and Victoria Lowell? The business family? Sarah nodded, surprised. You know them? Isabella's jaw tightened. She looked away for a moment, taking a deep breath, clearly trying to control her emotions. Then she looked back at Sarah, and there was something in her eyes. Something cold, something dangerous, something that promised justice. Yes, Isabella said quietly. I know them. There was so much weight in those 4 words, so much history, so much anger. Sarah, Isabella said softly. Look at me. Sarah looked up, confused by the intensity in Isabella's voice. Isabella reached into her bag and pulled out a small photograph. It was old, the edges worn. She handed it to Sarah carefully, watching her face. Do you recognize this woman? Isabella asked. Sarah stared at the photograph. It was old, faded, yellowed with time, but the face was clear. A young woman with soft eyes and a gentle smile. High cheekbones, full lips, dark, beautiful skin. She looked familiar. Very familiar. Almost like looking in a mirror. She looks like me, Sarah whispered, her voice filled with wonder and confusion. Yes, Isabella said quietly, her eyes never leaving Sarah's face. She does. Sarah looked up, her heart starting to beat faster. Who is she? Isabella took a slow breath, her hands folded in her lap. Her name was Queen Amara. She was the princess of our kingdom, the Adeyemi kingdom. 26 years ago, she disappeared. She was stolen as a baby from the palace. Someone betrayed us, took her, and vanished into the night. We searched for her for years. We used every resource we had. We never found her. She grew up not knowing who she was, not knowing her heritage, not knowing she was royalty. Sarah's heart started to beat faster. Her hands trembled. Why are you telling me this? Isabella leaned closer. Her voice was low and steady and absolutely certain. Because, Sarah, you are her daughter. You are the granddaughter of King Solomon. You are royalty. You are a princess. The words hung in the air like smoke, like magic, like impossibility. Sarah stared at Isabella, then she laughed. It was a weak, disbelieving sound, almost hysterical. That's impossible. That's crazy. I'm nobody. I'm just Sarah. I grew up in an orphanage. I have no family. I have nothing. It's not impossible, Isabella said firmly. She pulled out another photograph. This one showed Queen Amara holding a baby, her face glowing with love. This is your mother, and this, she pointed at the baby, is you. Sarah's hands began to shake violently. The photograph blurred through her tears. How do you know? Because I've been searching for you for 26 years, Isabella said, her own eyes becoming wet. I am your grandmother's sister. I am your great-aunt. And when I saw you lying on that road, when the ambulance lights lit up your face, when I looked at you properly, I knew immediately. You have her eyes, her face, her spirit. Sarah couldn't breathe. Her mind was spinning. Her whole world was turning upside down. No, this can't be real. Things like this don't happen. Not to people like me. Isabella reached out and placed her hand gently on Sarah's. Her touch was warm, real. It is real. And your daughter, she looked down at baby Zara, her eyes filling with tears, is a princess. She is the heir to the throne. She is royalty. Sarah looked down at Zara sleeping peacefully in her arms. This tiny baby they had called useless. This little girl they had thrown away. This child they had rejected. She was a princess, and Sarah, the woman they had treated like garbage, was royalty. Isabella stood up slowly, her dress flowing around her. Rest now, she said softly. When you're ready, when you're strong enough, we will leave this place. We will return to the kingdom. Your grandfather, the king, is old now. He has waited so long to find you, and those who hurt you? Her eyes turned cold, like ice. They will pay. Every single one of them will pay for what they did. For the first time in days, weeks, months, Sarah felt something rise in her chest. Not sadness, not fear, not despair. Strength, power, purpose. 6 months passed. Sarah stood in front of a tall mirror, staring at her reflection. She barely recognized herself. Her hair was styled elegantly, braided with gold thread and small jewels. Her dress was made of silk with gold embroidery along the edges, traditional royal patterns that had been passed down for generations. Around her neck hung a heavy necklace, passed down through generations of queens, each stone representing a generation of her family. Behind her, Isabella smiled with pride. "You look exactly like your mother." Sarah touched the necklace gently, feeling the weight of history. "I still can't believe this is real. Sometimes I wake up and think it's all a dream." "Believe it," Isabella said, walking closer. "You are Princess Sarah Adeyemi, daughter of Queen Amara, granddaughter of King Solomon, and your daughter, little Zara, is next in line to the throne." At the sound of her name, baby Zara giggled from her crib across the room. She was bigger now, stronger, her cheeks round and healthy. Sarah turned and walked over to her. She lifted her daughter gently and kissed her forehead. "Hello, my princess," Sarah whispered. "Are you ready to go home?" Zara reached up and grabbed her mother's finger, her grip surprisingly strong. Isabella stepped closer, her face becoming serious. "Are you ready?" Sarah looked at her. "For what?" "To return," Isabella said, "to face them, to show them exactly who they threw away." Sarah's face hardened. She thought of Marcus, his cold eyes, his empty words, his cowardice. She thought of Victoria's cruel voice. The rain, the pain, the gate closing, the feeling of being nothing. "Yes," Sarah said quietly, but her voice was steel. "I'm ready." Isabella nodded with satisfaction. "Good, because tomorrow we leave for the city. We will go to the Okafor mansion, and we will remind them exactly who they rejected. We will show them what happens when you throw away royalty." The next morning, a convoy of 5 black SUVs pulled up in front of the Okafor mansion. The vehicles were sleek, expensive, with tinted windows and official royal seals embossed in gold on the doors. The gates opened slowly, the guards confused and nervous. This was not a scheduled visit. These vehicles carried power, authority, consequence. Servants whispered to each other behind windows, their faces pressed against the glass. Who were these people? What did they want? The entire compound felt the shift in the air. Something important was happening. Something that would change everything. From the first SUV, Isabella stepped out. She was dressed in full royal robes, deep purple with gold trim that caught the morning light. Her head was held high, her shoulders back. Her presence commanded immediate respect. She looked like what she was, someone who stood beside kings, someone who had never bowed to anyone in her life. Behind her, the second door opened. Sarah stepped out slowly, deliberately. She wore a long, elegant gown in royal blue, the color of the Adeyemi royal family. The fabric flowed like water around her. Her hair was wrapped in gold cloth, styled in the traditional royal manner. On her hip, she carried baby Zara, who was dressed in a tiny white gown with delicate gold embroidery. On Zara's small head rested a miniature crown, crafted specifically for her, marking her as heir. The guards at the gate stared, their mouths hanging open. One of them stumbled backward, almost falling. Another dropped his radio. They had never seen anything like this. The woman they had carried out 6 months ago, weak and bleeding and crying, was now standing before them, looking like she owned the world, because she did. From the other 3 SUVs, royal guards emerged. 10 of them, dressed in formal military uniforms with royal insignia. They stood at attention, forming a protective formation around Sarah and Isabella. The display of power was unmistakable, undeniable. One of the mansion guards found his voice. "I need to announce you," he stammered. Isabella turned to him slowly. Her gaze was cold. "Go," she said simply. The guard rushed inside, almost running, his legs shaking. In the living room, Victoria sat on her white sofa, sipping tea from an expensive china cup, trying to maintain the illusion that everything was fine. Everything was not fine. Their business was crumbling. Partners were withdrawing. Money was running out. But Victoria refused to acknowledge it. She sat there in her expensive dress, pretending. Marcus stood by the window, scrolling through his phone, desperately trying to salvage business connections. His face looked older now, tired, defeated. Richard read a newspaper, his hands shaking slightly. Diane painted her nails, but her usual confidence was gone. The family was dying slowly, and they all knew it. The guard burst into the room, breathing so hard he could barely speak. "Madam," he gasped. "Madam, there are people outside." Victoria frowned, annoyed at the interruption. "Who?" "Many cars, madam, many people. They look very important, very powerful." Victoria set down her teacup with a sharp click. "Tell them to leave. We don't take visitors without appointments. I'm busy." "They have official seals, madam," the guard said, his voice shaking. "Royal seals, on their vehicles." Marcus's head snapped up from his phone. "Royal seals?" "Yes, sir, and madam—" The guard swallowed hard. "They said it's about your son's wife." The room went completely still. Victoria's face went pale, then red, then pale again. "Sarah," she whispered, "they didn't say the name exactly, madam. But they have a baby with them, and they are demanding to see you. Not requesting, demanding." Victoria and Marcus exchanged a look. Fear flickered in both their eyes. What was happening? What could Sarah possibly want after all this time? Victoria stood up slowly, smoothing her dress. "Fine," she said, trying to sound confident. "Bring them in. Let's see what this pathetic girl wants now, probably begging for money." The guard nodded and left quickly, grateful to escape the tension. A few moments later, the double doors to the living room opened wide. Not gently, not quietly. They swung open with force, with purpose. Isabella walked in first. Her presence filled the room immediately. She didn't just enter, she commanded. Every eye turned to her, every breath held. She moved with the confidence of someone who had never bowed to anyone, someone who commanded armies, someone who stood beside kings and made decisions that affected thousands of lives. Behind her, Sarah walked in slowly, each step measured and deliberate. Her chin was high, her shoulders were back. Her eyes were clear and cold and absolutely fearless. She looked directly at Marcus, not flinching, not looking away, not showing even a flicker of the pain he had caused her. Victoria stood up, her mouth already opening to speak something cruel, something cutting. But before she could say a word, Isabella raised one hand. "Silence," Isabella said. Her voice was not loud, but it carried absolute authority. Victoria's mouth snapped shut, shocked into compliance. Isabella smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. It was the smile of a predator who had cornered its prey. "My name is Isabella Adeyemi, royal advisor to the throne of the Adeyemi kingdom, senior counsel to King Solomon III, guardian of the royal lineage." Victoria blinked rapidly. "Royal advisor?" "Yes," Isabella said calmly, her voice smooth as silk and sharp as a blade. She gestured to Sarah with visible respect and reverence. "And this is Princess Sarah Adeyemi, daughter of the late Queen Amara, granddaughter of His Majesty King Solomon III, direct heir to the Adeyemi throne, member of the royal family for 26 generations." The room went completely silent. Not even breathing could be heard. Time itself seemed to stop. Marcus stared at Sarah like he was seeing a ghost. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. His phone slipped from his hand and clattered loudly on the marble floor. Richard dropped his newspaper, the pages scattering everywhere. Diane's nail polish bottle fell from her hand, spilling bright red polish across the white floor like blood. Victoria's face went through several colors, pale white, then grey, then an almost greenish tint. Her hands began to shake. "Princess," Victoria finally managed to choke out. Her voice was barely audible. "Is this some kind of joke? Some kind of elaborate scam?" "It's not," Isabella said, her voice cutting through the air like ice. She pulled out an official document, thick and bound in leather, with a golden royal seal embossed on the cover. She walked forward and placed it on the coffee table with deliberate force. The sound echoed through the room. "This is a verified lineage document, signed and sealed by His Majesty King Solomon himself, verified through DNA testing conducted by 3 independent international laboratories, confirmed by the Royal Council of Elders, authenticated by the National Registry. Sarah is the lost princess. Her mother, Queen Amara, was stolen as an infant from the palace 27 years ago." Sarah was raised in hiding in an orphanage, completely unaware of her true identity. Isabella paused, letting the words sink in. Until now. Victoria picked up the document with trembling hands. Her fingers left marks on the leather. Her eyes scanned the first page, then the second, then the third. Each page made her face lose more color. Her hands shook so badly she could barely hold the document. This can't be real," she whispered, her voice breaking. All her confidence, all her cruelty, all her power, it was crumbling right before everyone's eyes. "It is," Isabella said coldly. "Every word, every seal, every signature, all verified, all official, all legal. Sarah is royalty. She always has been. You simply didn't know it." Isabella then turned to baby Zara, who Sarah still held on her hip. "And this precious child," Isabella said, her voice softening for just a moment, "is Princess Zara, firstborn daughter of Princess Sarah, next in line to the throne, the future queen of the Adeyemi kingdom." Victoria's eyes locked onto Zara, the same baby she had called useless, the same baby she had said was worthless, the same baby she had called a burden and a shame, the same baby she had ordered thrown into the rain to die. That baby was wearing a crown. Marcus stepped forward, his legs shaking, his whole body trembled. "Sarah," he said quietly, his voice cracking with desperation. "Sarah, I didn't know. You have to believe me. If I had known, if I had any idea—" "You would have what?" Sarah interrupted. Her voice was calm, but it cut through the air like a blade made of ice, like winter itself speaking. "You would have kept me, loved me, treated me like a human being, treated your daughter like she mattered. Tell me, Marcus, what exactly would you have done differently?" Marcus opened his mouth, but no words came out. His throat worked uselessly, his eyes filled with tears. Nothing. Sarah stepped closer to him. Each step echoed. Each step felt like judgment approaching. "You didn't throw me out because you didn't know I was a princess, Marcus. Let's be very clear about that. You threw me out because I gave you a daughter. You threw me out because your mother told you to. You threw me out because you're weak, because you have no spine, because you're a coward who can't stand up for his own family." Her voice rose now, filling the room with righteous anger. "You threw me out while I was dying. While your daughter was being born. You turned your back while I begged. You walked away while I screamed for help. That has nothing to do with knowing I was a princess. That has everything to do with you being a worthless excuse for a man." Marcus's face crumpled. Tears streamed down his cheeks. He fell to his knees. "Sarah, please. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. Please, please forgive me." Sarah looked down at him. Her face showed nothing. No pity, no forgiveness, nothing. Victoria's face flushed red with anger and humiliation. "How dare you speak to my son that way?" she started, her voice rising. "How dare I?" Sarah's head whipped toward Victoria, her eyes blazed with fury. "How dare you? You called my daughter useless. You called her worthless. You said she was a burden. You said this family had no use for her." Sarah's voice shook with controlled rage. "You left me on the street in the rain while I was in active labor. You watched me beg. You watched me scream. You watched me collapse. And you ordered your guards to throw me out like I was trash." She stepped closer to Victoria, who actually backed up, fear visible on her face for the first time. "You left me there to die. You left your granddaughter to die. You didn't care if we lived or died as long as we died away from your precious house, away from your sight." Tears streamed down Sarah's face now, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage, of justice, of vindication. "But I'm not nothing. And neither is she." Isabella stepped forward, her presence commanding attention again. "The Royal Council has been informed of everything that happened that night. Every detail, every word, every action." Her voice was cold and formal now. "How you abandoned a pregnant woman during labor, how you endangered the life of a member of the royal family, how you showed cruelty and inhumanity beyond measure. The council has classified your actions as crimes against the crown." Richard finally found his voice. It was shaking, desperate. "We didn't know. We had no idea who she was. We would never—" "Ignorance is not an excuse," Isabella cut him off sharply. "Cruelty is cruelty, regardless of who the victim is. If she had been a common woman with no title, would that have made your actions acceptable? Would throwing a pregnant woman into the rain be justified if she wasn't a princess? Richard's mouth opened and closed. No answer came. The answer is no, Isabella continued. What you did was monstrous, regardless of Sarah's identity. The fact that she is royalty simply adds legal consequences to moral ones. Victoria's entire body was shaking now. Her carefully constructed world, her power, her control, it was all falling apart. What do you want from us? She managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. All her arrogance was gone, only fear remained. Sarah smiled. It was not a kind smile, it was not a forgiving smile. It was cold and final and absolutely terrifying. I want you to feel what I felt. She turned to Isabella and gave a small nod. Isabella pulled out her phone. She pressed one number. She spoke 3 words. Begin the process. Within minutes, the sound of sirens filled the air, multiple sirens, getting closer, louder. Police cars pulled up outside the mansion, their lights flashing red and blue through the windows. Officers walked up the driveway, their faces serious, professional. They carried official documents. Warrants, orders from the highest levels of government. The double doors opened again. A senior police officer entered, flanked by 4 others. He looked at a document in his hand, then looked up. Victoria, he said formally, his voice carrying official weight. You are under investigation for child endangerment, reckless endangerment of a royal family member, attempted harm to a crown heir, and violation of human rights protections. You are required to come with us for formal questioning at the Federal Investigation Bureau. Victoria's eyes went wide with absolute horror. What? No, this is a mistake. This can't be happening. You can't arrest me in my own home. You're not being arrested, the officer clarified. Yet. You're being detained for questioning. But I must inform you that based on the evidence already submitted, formal charges are likely. Evidence? Victoria's voice rose to a near scream. What evidence? Isabella stepped forward, holding a tablet. Security footage from your own compound showing you ordering the guards to remove a woman in active labor. Hospital records showing the condition Sarah arrived in. Hypothermia, severe dehydration, complications from delayed medical care. Witness statements from the guards who carried her out. Witness statements from neighbors who heard screaming. Medical testimony about how close both mother and child came to death. She looked directly at Victoria. You left a paper trail of your own cruelty. Victoria looked at Marcus desperately, grabbing his shirt. Do something. Call our lawyers. Fix this. You're my son. Marcus stood frozen, tears still streaming down his face. He looked at Sarah, his eyes pleading. Sarah, please. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but please. I'll do anything. Anything. Just please. Sarah walked closer to him. She looked into his eyes, the same eyes she had once loved, the same eyes that had looked at her with cold indifference while she begged for her life. You had a choice that night, Marcus, she said softly, but every word landed like a hammer. You could have stood up for me. You could have protected your wife. You could have protected your daughter. You could have been a man instead of a coward, but you didn't. She paused, letting the silence stretch. You chose them over us. You chose cruelty over compassion. You chose your mother's approval over your family's life. Now live with that choice. Live with knowing that you threw away a princess. Live with knowing that you rejected the future queen. Live with knowing that you're the man who turned his back on his own child. Marcus's face crumpled completely. He sobbed openly now, his whole body shaking. Sarah turned away from him. She walked toward the door, Isabella beside her, the royal guards forming a protective circle. Baby Zara yawned softly in her mother's arms, completely peaceful, completely unaware of the justice being served in her name. As they reached the exit, Sarah stopped. She turned back one final time. The entire family was frozen, watching her. Marcus on his knees, Victoria being led away by police officers, Richard sitting in shock, Diane staring at the floor. By the way, Sarah said, her voice carrying clearly through the room, my lawyers will be delivering divorce papers within the week. I'm taking back my family name, my real name, the name I should have always had, Adeyemi. She adjusted Zara on her hip. My daughter will grow up in a palace. She will grow up surrounded by love. She will grow up knowing exactly who she is. She will be educated by the finest teachers. She will be trained to lead. She will want for nothing." Sarah's voice grew stronger. "She will never feel unwanted. She will never feel worthless. She will never know what it means to be rejected because she's a girl." She looked directly at Victoria, who was being handcuffed now. "Because she is Princess Zara Adeyemi, heir to the throne, future queen, and I will spend every single day of my life making sure she never forgets her worth." Sarah's eyes swept across the family one last time. "You had royalty in your house. You had a future queen in your family, and you threw us away like garbage." She smiled coldly. "I hope it was worth it." With that final statement hanging in the air like a curse, like a judgment that would follow them forever, Sarah walked out of the mansion. The doors closed behind her with a sound like thunder, like finality, like the end of one story and the beginning of another. The royal guards opened the SUV doors. Sarah climbed in carefully, protecting Zara. Isabella sat beside her. As the convoy pulled away from the mansion, Sarah looked down at her daughter. "We're going home," she whispered, kissing Zara's forehead, "to a place where you will be loved, where you will be celebrated, where you will be protected, where you will be safe, where you will know your worth from the moment you wake up until the moment you sleep." Zara smiled up at her mother, her tiny hand wrapped around Sarah's finger, and for the first time in a long, long time, Sarah smiled back. A real smile, a genuine smile, a smile of peace and power and absolute victory. Behind them, the mansion grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared completely, and Sarah never looked back again. Months later, the family business completely collapsed. Royal contracts were pulled without explanation or possibility of appeal. Business partners withdrew, not wanting any association with the scandal. Banks refused loans. Investors pulled all funding. Their name, once powerful and feared, became a symbol of cruelty and rejection. Victoria was formally charged and stood trial. Though she avoided prison due to expensive lawyers finding legal technicalities, her reputation was destroyed forever. She became known as the woman who threw away a princess. Everywhere she went, people whispered, pointed, judged. Marcus tried to reach out to Sarah hundreds of times. He sent letters, he sent emails. He tried to call. He showed up at the palace gates. Every message went unanswered. Every call went ignored. Every letter was returned unopened. The guards at the palace gate turned him away every single time. Sarah and Zara lived in the royal palace now. The palace was magnificent, filled with light and music and laughter and love, surrounded by family who celebrated them, surrounded by people who bowed to them not out of fear, but out of genuine respect and love. Zara grew strong and bright and confident. Her laughter filled the palace halls. She learned to walk early, running through the palace gardens chasing butterflies. She learned to talk, calling Sarah Mama and calling King Solomon Grandpa King. She was loved by everyone who met her, adored by the entire kingdom. And Sarah, the woman who was once thrown away like garbage, now sat at royal councils making decisions that affected thousands of lives. She created programs to help abandoned mothers. She built shelters for pregnant women with nowhere to go. She made sure no one else would ever suffer what she had suffered. She used her voice. She used her power. She used her pain to create change. One evening, as Sarah rocked Zara to sleep in the royal nursery, Isabella came into the room. The older woman's face was serious. "They have requested an audience with you," Isabella said quietly. "Again." Sarah looked up, her hand still stroking Zara's soft hair. "What do they want this time?" "Forgiveness," Isabella said. "Marcus is begging. He says he's changed. He says he wants to meet his daughter." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. She looked down at her sleeping daughter, then she shook her head slowly but firmly. "No," Isabella nodded. "I thought you would say that." "They didn't ask for forgiveness when I was on the ground begging for my life," Sarah said softly, but her voice was absolutely firm. "They didn't care when I was suffering. They didn't care when I was dying. They didn't care about their granddaughter when she was being born in the rain." She looked up at Isabella. "They only care now because I have power, because I have status, because I'm not the nobody they thought they could throw away and forget." She looked back down at Zara, her heart swelling with fierce protective love. Let them live with their choices, just like I've learned to live with mine. They chose cruelty. Now they can taste the consequences." Isabella smiled with approval and pride. "You are truly your mother's daughter." Sarah kissed Zara's forehead gently, breathing in her sweet baby smell. "And she is mine." And in that quiet moment, in a palace far from the place that once rejected her, in a room filled with love instead of cruelty, surrounded by people who celebrated her instead of diminishing her, Sarah finally found complete peace, real peace, deep peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing your worth, the kind of peace that comes from knowing you survived, the kind of peace that comes from knowing you won, the kind of peace that comes from knowing that the people who tried to destroy you actually set you free. And every night, before Zara went to sleep, Sarah would hold her close and whisper, "You are a princess, not because of your title, but because of your heart. Never forget that. Never let anyone make you feel small. You are royalty. You are powerful. You are loved. Always remember. You were born into greatness, and nothing anyone says can ever take that away from you." And Zara would smile and say, "Yes, Mama." And Sarah would close her eyes and thank God for the rain that night, for the rejection that led to discovery, for the pain that led to power, for the loss that led to finding herself, for the cruelty that revealed her true family, for the closed door that opened a palace. Because sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the best thing that ever happened. Sometimes what looks like the end is actually the beginning. Sometimes being thrown away is actually being set free. My dear viewers, what do you think about this touching story? Please share your thoughts in the comment section. I would love to read from you. And guess what? In a few days, I will upload another very interesting story. So make sure you subscribe to my channel and turn on your notification bell so you will be notified immediately the story drops. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and share it with your friends. Thank you so much for watching.